Welcome to Enable the Disability Podcast, where we'll share stories, support, and more for people with disabilities and different abilities. We are at Enable Podcast on social media. My name is Deaf Jeff Herbert.
And my name is Kurt Hower, and we're talking with Casey Harris, a member of the award-nominated rock band X Ambassadors. Thank you for joining us, Casey.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you. Now, Casey, please start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your experiences growing up visually impaired.
I'm just some mostly blind guy from Ithaca, New York. I mean, I had vision problems. It's a genetic issue, so I've had it since I was born, and my parents found out I think when I was like 2 or 3. I'm not completely blind. My vision's been getting worse over the years, but generally for those in the know who speak blind people language, it's 2200, which is pretty poor. I mean, it basically translates to what most people could see at 200 feet away. I can see it about 20 feet, roughly. It's not really at all like that, but that's generally how the eye doctors measure these sort of things. Grew up like that. I was basically one of a handful, I could count them on one hand, of blind people I knew in Ithaca. And there wasn't really much of like a community per se. So I'd say, I mostly was for most of my life, I was pretty much the only blind guy I knew really, or had any interaction with. It's wild thinking back to being a kid back then compared to, what kids have now with like smartphones and like live camera sharing with AI and all that. Like, and being a blind kid today would be so different from being a blind kid back in the 90s.
So, Casey, I read you consider yourself not quite blind, but not really sighted either. We'd like to hear just a little bit more about that. And also, what kind of challenges do you face on a daily basis?
Man, it's interesting that you're bringing this up now because so over the past really only about a year, maybe a little longer, I've been developing cataracts on top of, my underlying vision issue. So I've actually been rapidly losing, particularly in my left eye, the vision that I have. And it's made me realize how much that has been, the little bit of vision I have has been a major part of, who I am and what I've done over the years. And believe it or not, even things like, recording audio on my computer, as much as I can do most of that with the screen reader, it's pretty adaptable. But there are just certain things like editing audio is such a visual task, believe it or not. And I used what little vision I had a lot to do things like that without even realizing it. And, growing up, it would, it's things like, I, like any other kid, I like to play video games. And there were certain video games like space games, that kind of thing, that were high contrast, light colored spaceships on a black background. I could see those well enough to play them. I guess it's one of those things that you don't really appreciate what you had until you lose it or until it's gone. But I'm very grateful, honestly, to have had the amount of vision that I've had because like it or not, there are certain aspects of life that really are visual, and it's hard to take in, any other way, like things like colors or like, a beautiful landscape. Very grateful that I've been able to appreciate those over the years. That being said, though, like with these cataracts developing, it also made me realize that I have gotten to a point that I can function like any other blind man. Like I really don't need to be able to see to do any of the things that I do on a daily basis in my life. And that's oddly kind of empowering. If I do end up losing my vision, if I go completely blind, I'm going to be pretty comfortable with it. And it wasn't interesting. It was growing up partially sighted. I think it would have been more of a contrast had I known any other totally blind people or been, friends with any other totally blind people. But it was sort of, I was always the blindest person of anyone that, I knew. It was always sort of that, coming from that side of the tracks, coming from the sighted world to the blind side. And, in retrospect, I really don't think I appreciated how much in the sighted world I was, to a certain extent.
So when you're touring, are there any like things that are particularly difficult about that?
Touring, oddly, is pretty straightforward. I mean, especially now, I've been doing it for like over 15 years. And it's the places are different, but it's like how all hotel rooms are different. They're all different, but they're all basically the same in a lot of ways. That like no matter what city you go to, be it in, we've been everywhere from, small towns in Ohio to Moscow, and
Mhm.
yeah, they're all fascinating and different. But when you get right down to it, they're all just, places where people gather to listen to music. And so they're all, they all generally have a green room. They all generally have a stage, so there are certain standard features touring, that make it easier, make it more predictable. It was really challenging way back in the day, back before, we had any sort of success and we were, touring in a van and, we were loading our own gear because, you know, we'd need all hands on deck to load gear. So I'd have an amp in one hand and a keyboard in the other hand. But my brother, who would usually help guide me around, he'd have gear in his hands too. So he was sort of verbally directing me. That's really partially where the inspiration for that song, Follow the Sound of My Voice, that we put out came from, is from memories of that, of him just literally having to be like, okay, I'm walking ahead of you, follow my voice. I'm here, I'm talking, keep following my voice. And we'd negotiate, the various corridors and narrow spaces of little clubs and get our gear onto stage. But I don't know, there's something very comfortable about, once I'm up on stage, behind my keyboards, I'm safe, man. All's good, everything is manageable and controllable from up there. So it's, touring is oddly sort of a comfort zone for me, I'd say. I'm more uncomfortable truly these days in the studio or self-producing, just because that's so much of a, in the studio you have to, if you go to a really cool studio, they'll have all these cool pieces of equipment and keyboards. But let me tell you, old synthesizers were the opposite of standardized as far as what controls do what. And it's, it's sometimes even hard to find the volume knob on some of those things. And they can make amazing sounds, but man, the learning curve in the studio on gear is sometimes really steep. And then truly the biggest pain in my is, and I love them, but I hate them. Recording with, software synthesizers and plugins, and all the tools that modern producers use. They sound amazing and they allow you to really and truly make an entire professional record with just your laptop. But my God, none of the software synthesizers or plugins that I've used are adapted for visual impairments at all. None of them work with screen readers. They're all these tiny little graphical knobs with these tiny little labels on them, and you have to click them with the mouse and drag the knob around, and it is just, I end up using presets a lot of the time just because of what a challenge it is to use the interfaces of software, instruments or audio effects or that sort of thing. So that's really, I'd say, more so than touring, it's been the studio that's been the challenge, visually.
It's interesting that you say that because as someone who's hard of hearing, and I also work as a DJ, in addition to this podcast, I also work as a wedding DJ.
That's awesome.
And so the technology that has evolved over the years has actually become easier for me because it's easier to have the visuals of the waveform, whereas I can't hear it as well as everyone else. So it's interesting that there's the flip side of the challenges too.
I mean, honestly, don't get me into audio editing. Like especially as I'm losing my vision, it was so much easier to edit a drum beat when I could see the little peaks of the transients of the hits on the waveform and would just cut and paste right there.
Right.
Now I'm having to use beat detection and stuff like that because I just can't see it well enough to do that anymore.
One of your biggest songs for X Ambassadors is Renegades, and the music video is awesome, and it features all sorts of different types of people with disabilities. How did that decision come about to make that video?
That was the coolest thing, man. I mean, that was sort of, it was a kind of a long story, but really we got that opportunity with the Jeep commercial, which really launched that song. But when we went to film with the Jeep people, they were sort of like, okay, let's highlight the fact that you're visually impaired in the commercial. And I was floored by that and impressed. And, it sort of made us all sort of look at, the song in a new light, being like, okay, you know, it brings a whole new meaning to the lyrics when it's about disability or, empowering, people who are different and who may not be able to do the, same things that normal people do. And that sort of led us to, we were also, touring a lot at the time, listening to lots of podcasts in the van. And I remember, I think it was This American Life featured this guy named Daniel Quiche, and he is a fascinating guy. He's totally blind and basically invented this technique of echolocation. Of he'd use his tongue to make these clicking sounds and then listen for the echoes, and it let him do stuff like ride a bike or navigate around totally independently by himself. And it was just such a cool, fascinating story. And that sent me and my brother down this rabbit hole of just like, man, there's this guy. And then there was also someone else who we'd met, I believe, at a show who was I believe a quadriplegic who had, climbed mountains and stuff like that. It was just we ran into these people or heard about these people along the way, and it just was like puzzle pieces fitting into place, like with the song. And we were, of course, after the success of the song, we knew we had to do some sort of video, and it kind of wasn't even like a discussion of what to do for the video. It was just like, let's tell the story of all these people who we've been finding out about. And so we reached out to a lot of the ones that we'd heard about, and then got recommended a few other people that we reached out to. And we were so lucky that most of them said yes, that they were totally down to participate. And man, it was just like the coolest, most humbling thing to have all these people who could, to be honest, who can do things that are way cooler than what, I could, like, I haven't ever climbed a mountain all the way to the top. Like I don't know how to echolocate. These people are mind-boggling to me. And so it was really cool to be able to feature them and show off how multi-talented human beings are, and when presented with a challenge, how adaptable people are.
Well, Casey, you're an inspiration to us, and
Thanks,
certainly
man.
we, well, absolutely. And we would like to know, is there anybody else who inspired you growing up?
Close to me, like people who I knew very much, my the two biggest musical influences were my piano teacher Molly McMillan, who is actually my mom's accompanist and still is sometimes, and she's an amazing local jazz player here in Ithaca. Has been a staple of this place for a long, long time. And she's the one who taught me to play, taught me to, and not only play, but also to how to what most people call transcribing, where you listen to a song you like, and learn how to figure it out note by note until you can play it, which has been such a crucial part of being a musician. It's that skill almost more so than even being able to play the piano, the skill of being able to hear something and pick it up and start playing along to it, playing chords, following the melody, that sort of thing right away is an invaluable skill. And she taught me that. And then my music teacher at school, honestly, I went to it was like an alternative community, middle and high school combined. And I think it was when I started high school there that he began teaching there. His name is Dara Anisi, and he's still teaching there. And he taught me how to love music, and how big and wide and amazing a world there was in music. Yeah, so Dara, he introduced me to I mean every different style of music you can imagine. This guy has the broadest taste in music of anyone I've ever met. And was also a fantastic guitar player, and really, through him and then through his classes, and then even just through, I would go into the classroom where he, taught during lunchtime and would just start playing on the piano. And then another one of his students would come in and start playing on the drums that they had there. And that's really where I got introduced to the world of playing music with other people, was through him and through his classes. And that, more than anything, that inspired me to want to become a musician professionally, and made me realize that it was actually, something I could maybe do. And then, not to go on and on, but obviously, influences, who weren't local, like musicians, famous musicians, Stevie Wonder is obviously a huge, influence. I finally got to meet him a couple of years ago, and he was the
Oh, wow.
nicest, coolest guy. Like really, such a down to earth dude. Like it was at this weird dinner thing, but he happened to be there, and I happened to be there. And the band guys helped me go over and say hi to him. And he, I just sat down. He started talking to me like, we'd known each other forever. He was telling me all about this new instrument, the arpeggi that he learned how to play, and like, just what a class act, man. What a cool guy.
Cool.
And then, of course, going further back, Ray Charles is, obviously a huge, huge inspiration, especially for me, as far as like learning how to play, like, more like soul gospel style piano. Like that was, I learned from him a lot. And then honestly, was inspired by a lot of guitar players like Jeff Beck and John McLaughlin, a lot of these sort of more out there, innovative guys. Just I was always inspired by musicians who did things with their instrument that no one else had really, or made music that didn't sound like anything else out there. I was always really inspired by that.
Here at Enable, we also like to talk about the thing that, how we're not just solely defined by our disabilities or even our jobs. So we also like to ask everyone that we have on the show, what do you like to do for fun? What do you like to do outside of work?
Oh man. Well, I mean, these days, so I have a 6 year old and a 4 year old. So when I'm not working, I am on duty as a dad. But it's also, to be fair, it's the most fun thing I've ever done in my life. And I'm being totally honest. It's exhausting. It's a lot of work, but man, you just kids are so fun and inspiring and just like every day is something new, man. And it also like it lets you get back in touch with what being a kid was like. It's funny how as grown-ups we get awfully rusty at, using our imaginations or just, being creative and playful. And man, having kids really helps shake the rust off of that and just, helps you rediscover the sort of the joy of just simply being alive and, and just exploring the world and creating things out of your own mind. It's being a dad's my favorite thing I've ever done.
Awesome.
And
Love it.
yeah, it's awesome every day.
Yeah, I can agree with that, Casey. I'm in a different season of my life. I have grandchildren, but I like to say they're the best slice of life.
It's really true, man. And hell, it definitely keeps me young, man. Honestly, like I get my steps counted in every day, no problem with these guys. We go turn around all over the place.
Well, what do you wish more people knew or understood about you and others with similar experiences?
One thing I've always wanted to let more people know about, and sort of I've been trying a bit more recently to express this is sort of I guess my slightly out there tastes in music and how amazing and inspiring it is to me that there's all this music out there that's not mainstream, that's not in Spotify's top hits, that is incredible music that people should go out and listen to, and that it just there are so many talented musicians and creative people in the world whose music is barely heard by anyone. And that was a lot of the artists who, as I was, growing up and becoming a musician, I was really inspired by just some of these more obscure, weird, off the beaten track artists. And I wish, especially in this day and age where everyone's being fed, music from whatever their chosen streaming app algorithm is, it's not easy to find more obscure artists a lot of the time. And I think that that's something I try to do. And I'd like more people to sort of try to do as well. Shout out to weird music because I like making weird music. When I'm not working making music with the band, I'm making some weird ass music. And let me tell you, it's one of my favorite things about music is the sheer variety that it has to offer. I'm trying to think if there's anything vision related that I'd like people to know. I guess that it is a challenge when you have visual issues. The world is built for sighted people, and it is a challenge. It's getting a lot more accessible with technology these days. But I think that it's important for people to understand that there is a middle ground between rah rah, you can do anything you want to, and oh, you're blind, you shouldn't even try. Like that, obviously I'm not going to go, fly an airplane, but there are a lot of things that you fully can do as a blind person that, a lot of sighted people wouldn't assume you can. And it's people like to put things in boxes, and it's easy to just say, "Oh, you can do anything you want to," or it's easy to be like, "Oh, poor you, I'm sure life must be so hard." And it's not either of those.
Mhm.
You know, it's like it is for anyone. Like, if you're a short guy, you can say rah rah, you're going to be a great basketball player all you want, but they probably aren't. But you know what? They probably could sink some hoops and be pretty good, one on one or casually. Like it's the same with a visual impairment. There are some things you definitely can't do, but when you look at it as a big picture, people with disabilities can absolutely live, their lives as richly as they choose. And I think it's a hard, complicated, nuanced thing to get across to people, but I think it's important for people to understand.
Thank you.
Well, you've certainly made an awesome life for yourself with your band. You guys are celebrating the 10th anniversary of the VHS album, and you are even doing concerts in Ithaca. What is it like to come to your hometown as a rock star?
Oh man, I mean it's the best thing in the world, dude. I mean, it's honestly like we're doing 2 nights here, which is the most we've ever done in Ithaca. But really, we've done the State Theater several times before now, and even we back before the pandemic, we threw a festival 2 years in a row here, which was really awesome. And I just every time we come back here, it's very like it's full circle. It's like first of all, we're playing at the State Theater, which is where I saw some of them, the acts that were, so formative to me as a kid. It's really good to feel like you come home and you're giving back to people. Like I hope that's how it is. I don't hope that's not too egotistical to think that, but just to be able to come here and to be like, hey guys, yeah, we're out and about playing shows everywhere, but we want to bring it back here and make it special for the town that gave us, all the opportunities that made us into who we are. Like really and truly, in retrospect, Ithaca was amazing in the opportunities that it provided to us, and it's magical to be able to come back here and be like, see, it worked. You guys did it right. Like, and thank you. Come see a show, yo. I think, as much as our records show, a catalog of our music, we started out as a live band. Live is still where we shine. So come see a show.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us. This is Enable, the Disability Podcast. We are at Enable Podcast on social media. Please like, follow, and subscribe.
And please share this podcast with your friends and family so we can share more stories of people with disabilities and different abilities that bring us all together.